Hello, hello, friends. Good evening. Welcome to Leanda's English Experience. If this is your first time here, I'm Leanda, and this is where we learn to improve our English through English immersion using amazing public domain English literature. I've been a full-time English teacher online for the last 10 years, and I've helped thousands of students improve their English. I'm also a very firm lover of literature, and this is an opportunity for me to attempt one of my personal goals that I've been putting off for way too long, and that is making it through the Project Gutenberg Top 100 list. Now, this book that we're doing today, The Wind in the Willows, is not actually on the top 100, but it's one of my childhood favorites that I literally haven't read in more than 30 years. And I wanted to revisit it and explore the original. And so far, I haven't been sorry because the prose is absolutely beautiful and the story is just so lovely. If you want to skip ahead, there will be chapters in the live replay. And for those of you who would like to read along, there's a link in the live chat to the free Project Gutenberg resource. And you can also find a link in the description as well as a link for the playlist with all the previous episodes where we did chapter 1 to 6. So this evening we are starting with chapter 7, The Piper at the Gates of Dawn. And I've been thinking really hard about this title because I feel like in the back of my mind, there's some sort of famous connection to this concept, and I can't put my finger on it. It's like in Lord of the Rings, um, have to look for their saviors at Helm's Deep at dawn. And I feel like somewhere in another story, there's something about pipes or trumpets playing at dawn, but I can't quite put my finger on it. So if you know what that is, if it's ringing any bells, please pop a message in the chat or leave a comment if you're watching the replay because I really want to figure out this puzzle. Maybe we'll figure it out together today as we finish the reading. But without further ado, let's get started with that. The Piper at the Gates of Dawn. The willow wren was twittering his thin little song, hidden himself in the dark selvage of the riverbank. Though it was past 10 o'clock at night, the sky still clung to and retained some lingering skirts of light from the departed day, and the sullen heat of the torrid afternoon broke up and rolled away at the dispersing touch of the cool fingers. Oh goodness, sorry. My gloves touched the wrong thing, and I accidentally closed the page. All right, let's start that sentence again. Though it was past 10 o'clock at night, the sky still clung to and retained some lingering skirts of light from the departed day, and sullen heat of the torrid afternoon broke up and rolled away at the dispersing touch of the cool fingers of the short midsummer night. Mole lay stretched on the bank, still panting from the stress of the fierce day that had been cloudless from dawn to late sunset, and waited for his friend to return. He had been on the river with some companions, leaving the water rat free to keep an engagement of long standing with Otter, and he had come back to find the house dark and deserted, and no sign of Rat, who was doubtlessly keeping it up late with his old comrade. It was still too hot to think of staying indoors, so he lay on some cool dock leaves and thought over the past day and its doings, and how very good they had all been. Wow. Right off the bat, that's such a beautiful description of this hot, muggy afternoon. It makes me think of the summers I spent in London in the early 2000s when I was there modeling, and how you get those days where it's cloudy the whole day, but you've got this sort of yeah, wet, muggy heat that just kind of clamps on everything. Um, the kind of heat where it could just suddenly start raining. Um, randomly in the afternoon. And in this case, it's a beautiful description of that because you can kind of feel that pressing heat and at the same time that sort of enjoyable, languid tiredness of the mole after such a beautiful day spent with friends along the river and now waiting for his friend to return. The rat's light footfalls was presently heard approaching over the parched grass. "Oh, the blessed coolness!" he said, and sat down, gazing thoughtfully into the river, silent and preoccupied. Now, let's quickly stop here for a second. Isn't that an interesting word? The rat's light footfall was presently heard approaching over the parched grass. Whenever I hear that word parched, I think about like dry paper or dry leaves and the way that they crunch and crackle under your feet. And in this case, that's exactly what the grass is doing because it's already well on into summer. So the grass has lost that beautiful lush green spring color, and now it's kind of become a brown, crispy sort of color and texture, almost like old parchment. And this is actually a great word that we still use today when we're talking about being very thirsty. So if you've been missioning around all day in the middle of the summer and you suddenly manage to sit down somewhere and you're craving a cool drink, then it would be a great way to say how you're feeling. "Oh, I'm so parched. Please pass me a glass of wine," or something like that. I suppose it would work for warm drinks like tea too. But in this situation, it just makes me think of a really warm day and being super, super thirsty, like your throat's all dry and crackly, if you know what I mean. Um, "You stayed to supper, of course," said the mole presently. "Simply had to," said the rat. "They wouldn't hear of my going before. You know how kind they always are, and they made things as jolly for me as ever they could, right up to the moment I left. But I felt a brute all the time, as it was clear to me that they were very unhappy, though they tried to hide it. Mole, I'm afraid they're in trouble. Little Portly is missing again, and you know what a lot his father thinks of him, though he never says much about it." "What, that child?" said Mole lightly. "Well, suppose he is, why worry about it? He's always straying off and getting lost and turning up again. He's so adventurous. But no harm ever happens to him. Everybody hereabout knows him and likes him, just as they do old Otter, and you may be sure some animal or other will come across him and bring him back again all right. Why, we found him ourselves, miles from home, and quite self-possessed and cheerful. All right, here's a mystery brewing. The Otter's child is missing. Yes, but this time it's more serious," said the rat gravely. "He's been missing for some days now, and the otters have hunted everywhere, high and low, without finding the slightest trace. And they've asked every animal too, for miles around, and no one knows anything about him. Otter's evidently more anxious than he'll admit. I got out of him that young Portly hasn't learned to swim very well yet, and I can see he's thinking of the weir. There's a lot of water coming down still, considering the time of year, and the place always had a fascination for the child. And then there are, well, traps and things, you know. Otter's not the fellow to be nervous about any son of his before it's time, and now he is nervous. When I left, he came out with me, said he wanted some air, and talked about stretching his legs. But I could see it wasn't that. So I drew him out and pumped him, and got it all from him at last. He was going to spend the night watching by the ford. You know the place where the old ford used to be, in bygone days before they built the bridge?" "I know it well," said Mole, "but why should Otter choose to watch there?" "Well, it seems that it was there he gave Portly his first swimming lesson," continued Rat, "from that shallow, gravelly spit near the bank. And it was there he used to teach him fishing, and there young Portly caught his first fish, of which he was so very proud. The child loved the spot, and Otter thinks that if he came wandering back from wherever he is, if he is anywhere by this time, poor little chap, he might make for the ford he was so fond of. Or if he came across it, he'd remember it well and stop there and play perhaps. So Otter goes there every night and watches, on the chance, just on the chance. They were silent for a time, both thinking of the same thing. The lonely heartsore animal, crouched by the ford, watching and waiting the long night through, on the chance. Wow. This is really quite incredible. How many times in your life have you waited, watched, gone somewhere, done something, just on the odd chance that whatever your expectation was or whatever your desire was would be there waiting for you or would somehow just appear? You know, maybe a long lost friend. Maybe you lost your puppy on a walk and you just went to their favorite spot on the odd chance that they might find their way there. Um, I can think of so many situations where that might happen and how urgent and also suppressing that sort of feeling is because you don't want to get your hopes up, but at the same time, you do. And there's nothing more incredible than doing that and then having success and finding that person, finding that thing that you had been longing for. But the converse of that is times when that doesn't happen. And the absolutely heart wrenching feeling, that heartbreak of knowing that the chance is gone or that there is no chance, that there is no hope. And I really hope in this case, for the otter's sake, that his child does find his way back because that's going to be devastating if he doesn't. They were silent for a time, both thinking of the same thing. The lonely, heartsore animal crouched by the ford, watching and waiting the long night through, on the chance. Well, well, said the rat presently, I suppose we ought to be thinking about turning in, but he never offered to move. Rat, said the mole, I simply can't go and turn in and go to sleep and do nothing, even though there doesn't seem to be anything to be done. We'll get the boat out and paddle up the stream. The moon will be up in an hour or so, and then we will search as well as we can. Anyhow, it'll be better than going to bed and doing nothing. Just what I was thinking myself, said the rat. It's not the sort of night for bed anyhow, and daybreak is not so very far off, and then we may pick some news of him from early risers as we go along. They got the boat out, and the rat took the sculls, paddling with caution, out in midstream. There was a clear, narrow track that faintly reflected the sky, but wherever the shadows fell on the water from the bank, bush, or tree, they were as solid to all appearance as the banks themselves, and the mole had to steer with judgment accordingly. Dark and deserted as it was, the night was full of small noises, song and chatter and rustling, telling of the busy little population who were up and about, plying their trades and vocations through the night till sunshine should fall on them at last and send them off to their well-earned repose. The water's own noises, too, were more apparent than by day, its gurglings and kloops more unexpected and near at hand, and constantly they started at what seemed a sudden clear call from an actual articulate voice. The line of the horizon was clear and hard against the sky, and in one particular quarter it showed it showed black against a silvery climbing phosphorescence that grew and grew. At last, over the rim of the waiting earth, the moon lifted with slow majesty till it clear till it swung clear of the horizon and rode off, free of moorings, and once more they began to see surfaces, meadows widespread, and quiet gardens, and the river itself from bank to bank, all softly disclosed, all washed clean of mystery and terror, all radiant again as by day, but with a difference that was tremendous. Wow, so beautiful. Their old haunts greeted them again in other raiment, as if they had slipped away and put on this pure new apparel, and come quietly back, smiling as they shyly waited to see if they would be recognized again under it. Fastening their boat to a willow, the friends landed in this silent silver kingdom, and patiently explored the hedges, the hollow trees, the runnels and their little culverts, the ditches and dry waterways. Embarking again and crossing over, they worked their way up the stream in this manner, while the moon, serene and detached in a cloudless sky, did what she could, though so far off, to help them in their quest, till her hour came and she sank earthwards reluctantly and left them, and mystery once more held field and river. Past, then a change began slowly to declare itself. The horizon became clearer, field and tree came more into sight, and somehow with a different look. The mystery began to drop away from them. A bird piped suddenly and was still, and a light breeze sprang up and set the reeds and bulrushes rustling. Rat, who was in the stern of the boat while Mole sculled, sat up suddenly and listened with passionate intentness. Mole, who with gentle strokes was just keeping the boat moving while he scanned the banks with care, looked at him with curiosity. "It's gone," sighed the Rat, sinking back in his seat again. "So beautiful and strange and new. Since it was to end so soon, I almost wish I had never heard it, for it has roused a longing in me that is pain, and nothing seems worth while but just to hear that sound once more and go on listening to it forever. No, there it is again," he cried, alert once more. Entranced, he was silent for a long space, spellbound. "Now it passes on, and I begin to lose it," he said presently. "Oh, Mole, the beauty of it! The merry bubble and joy, the thin, clear, happy call of the distant piping. Such music I've never dreamed of, and the call in it is stronger even than the music is sweet. Row on, Mole, row, for the music and the call must be for us." The Mole, greatly wondering, obeyed. "I heard nothing myself," he said, "but the wind playing in the reeds and the rushes and the osiers." The Rat never answered, if indeed he heard. Rapt, transported, trembling, he was possessed in all his senses by this new divine thing that caught up his helpless soul and swung and dandled it, a powerless but happy infant in a strong and sustaining grasp. In silence, Mole rowed steadily, and soon they came to a point where the river divided, a long backwater branching off to one side. With a slight movement of his head, Rat, who had long dropped the rubber lines, directed the rower to take the backwater. The creeping tide of light gained and gained, and now they could see the colour of the flowers that gemmed the water's edge. "Clearer and nearer still," cried the Rat joyously. "Now you must surely hear it. At last I see you do." Aha, this is obviously the piper of dawn. Breathless and transfixed, the Mole stopped rowing as the liquid run of that glad piping broke on him like a wave, caught him up and possessed him utterly. He saw the tears on his comrade's cheeks, and bowed his head and understood. For a space they hung there, brushed by the purple loosestrife that fringed the bank. Then the clear, imperious summons that marched hand in hand with the intoxicating melody imposed its will on Mole, and mechanically he bent to the oars again. And the light grew steadily stronger, but no bird sang, as they were wont to do at the approach of dawn. But for the heavenly music, all was marvelously still. Wow. I can just close my eyes and actually imagine that beautiful, beautiful sound, whatever it may be. But at the same time, maybe it's the cynic in me, there's a part of me that's a little bit cautious because when I think about entrancing piping, I always think about the story of the Pied Piper of Hamelin. And we know how that story worked out. He was the only one who could rid of all the rats, and the village people didn't honor their agreement. So the piper stole away all of their children. And even though this is such a beautiful, beautiful description of what sounds like such a serene and incredible moment, there is a part of me that's a little bit nervous that there could be something bad to come. On either side of them, they glided onwards. The rich meadow grass seemed that morning of a freshness and a greenness unsurpassable. Never had they noticed the roses so vivid, the willow herb so riotous, the meadow sweet so odorous and pervading. Then the murmur of the approaching weir began to hold the air, and they felt a consciousness that they were nearing the end, whatever it might be, that surely awaited their expedition. A wide half circle of foam and glinting lights and shining shoulders of green water, the great weir closed the backwater from bank to bank, troubled all the quiet surface with twirling eddies and floating foam streaks, and deadened all other sounds with its solemn and soothing rumble. In midmost of the stream, embraced in the weir's shimmering arm spread, a small island lay anchored, fringed close with willow and silver birch and alder. Reserved, shy, but full of significance, it hid whatever it might hold behind a veil, keeping it till the hour should come, with the hour those who were called and chosen. Slowly, but with no doubt or hesitation whatsoever, and in something of a solemn expectancy, the two animals passed through the broken tumultuous water and moored their boat at the flowery margin of the island. In silence they landed and pushed through the blossom and scented herbage and undergrowth that led up to the level ground, till they stood on a little lawn of marvellous green, set around with nature's own orchard trees, crab-apple, wild airy and sloe. "This is the place of my song dream, the place the music played to me," whispered the rat, as if in a trance. "Here, in this holy place, here, if anywhere, surely we shall find him." Then suddenly the mole felt great awe fall upon him, an awe that turned his muscles to water, bowed his head, and rooted his feet to the ground. It was no panic, terror. Indeed, he felt wonderfully at peace and happy, but it was an awe that smote and held him, and without seeing, he knew it could only mean that some august presence was very, very near. With difficulty he turned to look for his friend, and saw him at his side, cowed, stricken, and trembling violently. And still there was utter silence in the populous bird-haunted branches around them, and still the light grew and grew. Wow. Have you ever been in awe of something that turned your muscles to water? Wow. You know, the word awesome comes from this word awe. And I even find myself guilty of using that word quite often, maybe too much. Oh, that's so awesome. Oh, that's so awesome. But here in this tiny little piece of paragraph, I think the full impact of what awe really means can be felt. It's not just something that's cool or great or fantastic. It's a feeling that turns your muscles to water, that makes you bow your head as if something greater, some august presence is very near you, something that is so astounding that it keeps you rooted in place in wonder and peace and happiness. Um, and maybe sometimes also makes you feel a little bit nervous, cowed and stricken, as they say here. It reminds me of a trip my husband and I did to an area called the Tankwa Karoo here in South Africa, where there's this incredibly wide open plain. Maybe something similar to Death Valley in the US. I don't know because I've never been there. But it's so wide and so open, and the land is so bare, but it's so beautiful and so awe-inspiring, especially at night when you can see every little star in the sky. And it just makes you feel so small, so humble, so part of something greater than yourself. And I think that Graham explains or expresses that in that little section so, so beautifully. All right, let's continue. Perhaps he would never have dared to raise his eyes, but that, though the piping was now hushed, the call and the summons seemed the call and the summons seemed still dominant and imperious. He might not refuse, were Death himself waiting to strike him instantly, once he had looked with mortal eye on things rightly kept hidden. Trembling, he obeyed, and raised his humble head. And then, in that utter clearness of the immediate dawn, while nature, flushed with fullness of incredible colour, seemed to hold her breath for the event, he looked in the very eyes of the friend and helper, saw the backward sweep of the curved horns gleaming in the growing daylight, saw the stern hooked nose between the kindly eyes that were looking down on them humorously, while the bearded mouth broke into a half smile at the corners, saw the rippling muscles on the arms that lay across the broad chest, the long supple hands still holding the panpipes only just fallen away from the parted lips, saw the splendid curves of the shaggy limbs disposed in majestic ease on the sward, and saw, last of all, nestling between his very hoofs, sleeping soundly in entire peace and contentment, the little round, podgy, childish form of the baby otter. And all this he saw for one moment, breathless and intense, vivid on the morning sky, and still he looked, he lived, and still, as he lived, he wondered. Rat, he found his breath to whisper, shaking. Are you afraid? Afraid, murmured the rat, his eyes shining with unutterable love. Afraid of him? Oh, never, never. And yet, oh, Mole, I am afraid. Then the two animals crouched to the earth, bowed their heads, and did worship. Suddenly and magnificent, the sun's broad gold disk showed itself over the horizon facing them, and the first rays, shooting across the level water meadow, took the animals full in the eyes and dazzled them. When they were able to look once more, the vision had vanished, and the air was full of the carol of birds, and hailed the dawn. Wow. Okay. So I missed it when I got sidetracked by the incredible beauty of the part about muscles like water. But in the next section, for those of you who are a little bit confused now, these two animals had a vision, or you can say a visitation from the Green Man, I guess, if I remember correctly. That's what he's called. The Green Man um, is a very ancient, what's the word I'm looking for? Nature deity, which is said to be the male energy that is dominant in the in the high summer, he sometimes appears in the form of a, oh, what's the word I want now? Not centaur, in the form of a satyr, I think, which is basically like a man, well, an entity with the body of a man and the bottom half of a goat with feet like a goat. And he's got horns and is said to play beautiful, beautiful panpipes. And he's the guardian and protector of all nature. And in this situation, Ratty was basically called to by him. They had this vision and this feeling that they needed to go to this place. They could hear this piping music that nobody else could hear, but even the birds were still. And in that moment, they saw him, the green man, who had rescued and protected the otter's little baby and kept him safe until people who were worthy could come there and take him to where he needed to be. That is so cool. Wow, wow, wow. And of course, the animals, being more in touch with nature than we are, would be able to see him more easily, I guess. I don't know what your guys' thoughts are about things like that. Some things have to be believed to be seen, I suppose. As they stared blankly in dumb misery, deepening as they slowly realized all they had seen and all they had lost, a capricious little breeze dancing up from the surface of the water tossed the aspens, shook the dewy roses, and blew lightly and caressingly in their faces. And with its soft touch came instant oblivion, for this is the last best gift that the kindly demigod is careful to bestow on those to whom he has revealed himself in their helping, the gift of forgetfulness, lest the awful remembrance should remain and grow and overshadow mirth and pleasure, and the great haunting memory should spoil all the afterlives of little animals helped out of difficulties, in order that they should be happy and light-hearted as before. Mole rubbed his eyes and stared at Rat, who was looking about him in a puzzled sort of way. "I beg your pardon. What did you say, Rat?" he asked. "I think I was only remarking," said Rat slowly, "that this was the right sort of place, and that here, if anywhere, we should find him. And look! Why, there he is, the little fellow!" And with a cry of delight he ran towards the slumbering Portly. But Mole stood still a moment, held a thought, as one wakened suddenly from a beautiful dream, who struggles to recall and can recapture nothing but a dim sense of the beauty of it. The beauty! Till that too fades away in its turn, and the dreamer bitterly accepts the hard, cold waking and all its penalties. So Mole, after struggling with his memory for a brief space, shook his head sadly and followed the Rat. All right, let me just grab another little sip. Oh, beautiful. For any of you joining me as I am continuing, if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to leave them in the chat. I'd be more than happy to answer anything as well as I can. All right, where were we? Portly woke up with a joyous squeak and wriggled with pleasure at the sight of his father's friends, who had played with him so often in the past days. In a moment, however, his face grew blank, and he fell to hunting around in a circle with a pleading whine, as a child that had fallen asleep, happily asleep in his nurse's arms, and wakes to find itself alone, laid in a strange place, and searches corners and cupboards, and runs from room to room, despair growing silently in his heart. Even so, Portly searched the island and searched, dodged, dogged and unwearying, till at last the black moment came for giving up and sitting down and crying bitterly. The mole ran quickly to comfort the little animal, but Rat, lingering, looked long and doubtful at certain hoof marks deep in the sward. Some great animal has been here, he murmured slowly and thoughtfully, and stood musing, musing, his mind strangely stirred. Come along, Rat, called the mole. Think of poor Otter, waiting up there by the ford. Audley had soon been comforted by the promise of a treat, a jaunt on the river in Mr. Rat's real boat, and the two animals conducted him to the water's side, placed him securely between them in the bottom of the boat, and paddled off down the backwater. The sun was fully up by now, and hot on them. Birds sang lustily and without restraint, and flowers smiled and nodded from either bank, but somehow, so thought the animals, with less of richness and blaze of colour than they seemed to remember seeing quite recently somewhere, but they wondered where. The main river reached again, they turned the boat's head upstream towards the point where they knew their friend was keeping his lowly vigil, and they drew near the familiar ford. As they drew near the familiar ford, the mole took the boat on into the bank, and they lifted Portly out and set him on his legs on the tow path, gave him his marching orders and a friendly farewell pat on the back, and shoved out into midstream. They watched the little animal as he waddled along the path contentedly with importance, watched him till they saw his muzzle suddenly lift and his waddle break into a clumsy amble as he quickened his pace with shrill whines and a wriggling of recognition. Looking up the river, they could see Otter start up, tense and rigid, from out of the shallows where he crouched in dumb patience, and could hear his amazed and joyous bark as he bounded up through the osiers on the path. And then the mole, with a strong pull on one oar, swung the boat round and let the full stream bear them down again whither it would, their quest now happily ended. "I feel strangely tired, Rat," said the mole, leaning wearily over his oars as the boat drifted. "It's being up all night, you'll say, perhaps, but that's nothing. We do as much half the nights of the week, at this time of year. No, I feel as if it had been through something very exciting and rather terrible, and if it was just over, and yet nothing particular has happened. Or something very surprising and splendid and beautiful," murmured the Rat, leaning back and closing his eyes. "I feel just as you do, Mole, simply dead tired, though not body tired. It's lucky we've got the stream with us to take us home. Isn't it jolly to feel the sun again soaking into one's bones, and hark to the wind playing in the reeds? It's like music." "Far away music," said the Mole, nodding drowsily. "So I was thinking," murmured the Rat, dreamful and languid. "Dance music, the lilting sort that runs on without stop, but with words in it too. It passes into words and out of them again. I catch them at intervals. Then it is dance music once more, and then nothing but reeds, soft, thin, and whispering." "You can hear better than I," said Mole sadly. "I cannot catch the words." "Let me try and give you them," said Rat softly, his eyes still closed. "Now it's turning into words again, faint but clear. Lest the awe should dwell, and turn your frolic to fret, you shall look on my power at the helping hour, but then you shall forget." Now the reeds take it up. "Forget, forget," they sigh, and it dies away in a rustle and a whisper. Then the voice returns. "Let's limbs be reddened and rent. I spring the trap that is set. As I loosen the snare, you may glimpse me there, for surely you shall forget." "Row nearer, Mole, nearer to the reeds. It's hard to catch and grows each minute fainter. Helper and healer I cheer, small waifs in the woodland wet. Strays I find in it, wounds I bind in it, bidding them all forget." "Nearer, Mole, nearer. No, it's no good. The song has died away into reed talk." "But what do the words mean?" asked the wondering Mole. "That I do not know," said the Rat simply. I passed them on to you as they reached me. Ah, now they return again. And this time, full and clear. This time, at last, it is the real, the unmistakable thing. Simple, passionate, perfect. Well, let's have it then, said the mole, after he had waited patiently for a few minutes, half dozing in the hot sun. But no answer came. He looked and understood the silence. With a smile of much happiness on his face, and something of a listening look still lingering there, the weary rat was fast asleep. Ah, well, who do you think was singing that little song? Where did that come from? Was it his imagination? Was it just the reeds? Or could it be Pan? Could it be the Green Man who was singing his song of forgetfulness? And I do think that that's quite amazing that they talk about that, that it's a gift that they would forget. Because if they could remember, they would be so mesmerized by it and always yearning for it that it would actually take away from their enjoyment in their daily life. So, this demigod, this deity, blesses them by making them forget what actually happened, making them forget seeing him. And in each one of these little verses, in each one of the little verses of this poem, he points out how he is in these places and how he's there to help, and that you might see him, but that ultimately you should forget. And isn't it fantastic, just perfect, that the rat falls asleep just then, right at that moment? So cool. Well, I think on that note, that's going to be the end of the reading for this evening. Please let me know what you think and if you enjoyed it. Have any of you ever experienced a moment like that of complete awe? I'd love to hear about it. In our next episode, we're going to find out what happened to Toad, and I hope you stick around for that. In our previous session, Toad was found guilty of grand theft auto and was arrested and given a 20-year sentence. And I can't actually wait to see what happens and to see if he actually gets out, because there is absolutely no way that Toad is going to stay in prison for 20 years. I just don't see that happening. So I expect he's going to find some fantastic way to break out of jail. And the next chapter, chapter 8, is called Toad's Adventures. So if you would like to stay around for that, then please check this video next. See you next time.